Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. um, How's everyone doing? Sorry about that. I just like to have the intro open on YouTube to make sure everything's streaming correctly. So welcome to the fam. Welcome if you're new to the channel. So great to have you here. And as always, whenever you interact with content from independent content creators like myself on any of the platforms you find this on, either on YouTube or BitChute or Odysee, these are the three platforms I'm posting on at this time. Whenever you interact with the content, it actually does support the content creators and the influence of the AI algorithm that this information is worth spreading to a larger audience. So with that in mind, let's move forward with today's transmission, shall we? So let's go through some logistics. Number one, it's like casual Wednesdays over here. Ida apparently is making its way up the coastline. I can't speak for anybody else. I am in Pennsylvania. We were supposed to get this flash flood warning and all this, really, it's gonna be crazy. It's like drizzling right now. So, but it is the first day of September, and the temperature has really dropped. It's raining, and I just kind of in this really casual mode right now. Kind of bundled. I got my hat on. So that's the vibe right now. And the vibe very much is okay, guys, it's time to give ourselves a little bit of a break right now. There is, yesterday was incredibly intense. I'm disappointed that I wasn't able to keep the transmission up. The sound on my new microphone is not cooperating at all. I've tried everything that I know how to do from my own limited scope here, and it's just not working. So I had to take it down, which is really too bad. But it's all about divine timing, right? It's the only timing. And based on everything that has transpired since yesterday into today, it just feels like that I wasn't even really able to hold the intensity of the transmission that came through. So it's all good. And if you checked out my story about being a walk-in, thank you. I got a really positive response to that. I'm really stoked about that. I've been wanting to make that video for a while. It's pretty raw. I'm feeling a little vulnerable in some ways for putting myself out there in that way. But I think it's important for people to share their experiences, share their stories so that we can learn from each other, connect to each other. And I know the lighting is not great, but it's better than having the glare. It's interesting about equipment, right? I could invest in slick equipment. I could invest in slick marketing. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because it's all about what's coming from here. And I'm going to tell you a little story about that. Before I came into any of this work, I was a musician. I went to music school. It was my life. And I was very good at what I did. And I managed from, little 10-year-old D all the way up to my undergraduate study in music school. I performed, I practiced, I auditioned on my crappy Yamaha student model from 10 years old up to my audition into college on this crappy student model, right? Nothing special. Had all kinds of problems, but because I developed a relationship with that equipment and that instrument over the course of a decade, really. I knew every tiny little quirk, every idiosyncrasy, and it wasn't until I got into college, into music school, and finally saved up and bought this beautiful Selmer Paris. The action on it was like butter. It was just so gorgeous. But it didn't really make that much of a difference in what I was doing because I got into where I was playing that crappy student Yamaha model for 10 years. So just consider that, this is just an aside, right? That it doesn't really matter. You can have the best equipment, the best marketing, the best lighting, the best microphone, right? You can buy as many bot subscribers and you can have a following of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And at the end of the day, it's all about what's coming from here. That's going to make the biggest difference. So that's why I don't worry about things like my equipment and my marketing, because when people are ready for the message that I have to give, then they find me. And until that's ready, until they are ready for that message, till they are resonating with what I'm putting out there as my authentic self, then it doesn't matter how much marketing or slick equipment that I put out there. It's not going to resonate as much as the one-on-one authentic presentation of what I have to offer. So today is about the stillness in the storm. So I am using the microphone on the camera or on the laptop. So like I said, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. I've been using it for the last 2 years, so I don't, why fix something that's not necessarily broken? Okay, so the stillness in the storm, right? I mean, this is so appropriate considering what we, at least in the United States, are facing with Hurricane Ida and its impact in Louisiana and how it's moving up the coast. And it provides a really useful imagery, right, of that, the eye of the storm, right, the calm in the storm, finding your stillness, finding your 0 point, because it's that 0 point where all possibilities are available to us. At that point, nothing is impossible, but you have to find that 0 point. And this is why I've been really advocating very strongly now for a long time, pretty much since I started Catalyst Energies and even before. But this coming September, I've been doing these flash readings for the lunar transit, the new moon that's coming on the 6th and the entire month of September. And in retrospect, I kind of just like, damn, if I had realized exactly how much was going to be going on in September, the amount of work that I'm putting into these readings is definitely, it's a good value. Let's just put it that way. So I am still offering the flash sale up until the 6th. If you book up until the 6th, it's only $44. And I am cramming so much in because there's so much happening in September. And it's really setting us up to get ourselves anchored and grounded and stabilized, and to invite in some type of symbolic representation, some sort of synchronous message, something that we have been praying for that'll show us, yes, you're on the right path. Yes, you are doing the work that you need to do to get yourself to a place where you can handle anything that comes at you. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that. If you haven't yet, you can just book right from my website. It's in the description box below. You just find the lunar transit reading, send out the request, and as long as it's booked by the 6th, it'll only be $44. And it's just, there's so much happening in September. Right now, though, okay, right now, it's very important that we are taking the opportunity with our moon in Cancer, right? This is her home territory in the sign of Cancer, to allow our feelings, our intuition, our emotional landscape to settle and be still, right? To ground down and to root into some sort of stable position. And when we can do this from an emotional and feeling-based position, right? Because the moon does represent how we feel on the inside. It represents our subconscious. It represents our internal waters, our emotional landscape. When we can calm that, if we can find the stillness by strengthening our stabilization, our own root system to who we truly are, then we can handle the storm coming through and just blowing everything around. And it's really important that we heed this today. And the astrology is really supporting it. Now, yesterday, I'm going to go over the reading that I actually did pull yesterday, because it is... The today and yesterday's reading are linked, inextricably linked, okay? It's not even like a day. They're 2 separate days. It seems to be one span of time. But what I will say that has been reported to me from several different ways, my own experiences, other people, other colleagues, clients, family members, you name it. People have been vacillating back and forth between this really uncomfortable physical experience, maybe an uncomfortable mental experience, right? Emotional experience. People are really struggling, okay? And then there was a lift, right? And then yesterday it came back even stronger. And we're going to look at that because the connection between the sun and Saturn yesterday was a big part of that. And I really wanted to talk about that so people understood that it was an opportunity for transmutation, to perform our own inner alchemy. But it just wasn't in the cards, right? It just wasn't going to happen. And now we can look at it retroactively and be like, oh yeah, I see now how these astrological transits have an impact on us. And not, they don't control us. It is not outside of the realm of our participation, but they do impact us, right? Because nothing is separate from anything else, including the cosmos. So the Sun and Saturn made this connection yesterday, the quincunx, right? This inconjunct, and it really took people right back to that place. Physical pain that seems inconsolable, right? Hopelessness, this feeling that nothing we do is really going to matter, that our fate is sealed, right? That how can we possibly act out the vision of what we see as our highest potential when we are being crushed at every turn, it seems like. And there's a reason that we need to experience these things. Not to say that we have to suffer. It's that when we get pushed to this limit, we realize how much stronger we really are, how much of our container can stretch, right? Our boundaries can stretch. So today has been a lift. It certainly has been a lift on so many levels, right? And I can't say for sure if it's going to stay like this, but in this moment, this respite, right? This calmness that we can really bring into ourselves, this ability to stabilize ourselves emotionally and intuitively, and even in our subconscious, right? Find some stillness here in this difficult process. It's going to be really important because we're going to want to come back to this as September unfolds and we're bombarded over and over and over again with opportunities to shore ourselves up, to train ourselves, to see that we are part of something much bigger than just us individually, but we still have to train ourselves, educate ourselves. We still have to purify ourselves. We still have to follow that path of discipleship so that we can offer ourselves in service to this whole process, right? We're no good to any of this if we continue to allow ourselves to be swung around, and not so much swung around because that's going to happen anyway, but we have to find that still point. And we're going to see in today's reading that that is where it's all leading to, right? The beginner's mind, the fool, right? The fool on the hill that is able to see all possibilities in that singular moment because there is total trust in our own instincts and our own gut, right? And that is really the true innocence that the fool represents in an archetypal language. And that's all this is, archetypal language. So, and if it seems like I'm going over territory that you're like, Dee, you've talked about this for 2 years, like we know what all of this means, it's because I have some new viewership with people that are like, I want to understand astrology more. So I'm going to be speaking in that way as well. So just, it's always good to go back and review things too, if you feel like that you have a handle on some of these concepts in this language. Maybe things come through differently. We're different every single moment of the day, right? We're changing, we're growing, we're evolving. So information is also going to impact us differently, just like the walk-in experience. So I do encourage you to check that out because I think that it's so far, the feedback I'm getting is that it's really helped people make sense of some situations in their own lives that they're like, I don't understand what this means or why it's happening or why I feel different. But I think it's important like I said, for all of us to share our stories because this is how we learn and grow from each other. We don't need leaders. We are the leaders for ourselves. And it's really about that sovereign individual nature that's represented by Leo, right? We went through all of this Leo stuff. And remember, we're still in this lunar cycle. It started with a Leo new moon up until the 6th when we have the Virgo new moon. So a lot of this energy is wrapping itself up right now, but it's still right here with us, right? The lunar cycle hasn't ended yet. And so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. It's very easy to do. So Again, the Cancer moon couldn't come soon enough as far as I'm concerned. So I want to look at yesterday's reading first. And we won't go through everything in as much detail as we usually do. I just want to show you the spread. It's really important that we see what we were dealing with yesterday. So come back. Oh, I didn't even bring it up. Okay. Hold on one second, guys. So I will attempt to keep talking to you while I find the reading and bring it up on, it's very possible that it's gone. It is gone, actually. So never mind. But what I will walk us through it because there are some things here that are relevant. So let's just look at today's reading. How about that? And I'm going to minimize myself here, and we will go through this one piece at a time of our archetypal language and the intuitive aspect that has come through. So what I will say for sure is this Five of Discs was our outcome of yesterday. Okay, so you can see that there is a very congruent connection here between what was going on yesterday into today. Okay, and there's also some congruency not only intuitively with these with this archetypal language, but also we're going to see here that the connection between the Sun and Saturn yesterday is now being completed. There's a piece of the puzzle that's coming in today with the moon in Cancer that is going to complete this. And it's going to show us that despite all of their worry, the material crisis that this often represents, the Five of Discs, right? The pentacles, the discs, the nuts and bolts of material reality. The Five of Discs, the worry, right? When we have a material crisis, in front of us, we worry. Mercury is the mind, and it is the function of the mind. And so it's running over all of this information over and over again of worry about the material crisis, right? Worrying about what could happen, certainly worrying about what has happened. I mean, there is plenty in our material world, in our actual everyday lives that there's plenty to worry about, right? And there's a worry that we are losing something. You're worried about what could happen. You're worried about what has happened, right? But remember that when the forest burns, it creates space for new growth and it fertilizes the land. So that is like the silver lining of a card that really, if you look at it, there is a lot of density to this. There is a lot of focus downward into what is at the root of us, you know, where we find ourselves rooted energetically and materially. It also allows us to reconsider our values, right? And to manage to get along when things are not exactly where we want them to be, right? And this is not to say that we should not address things, that we should not take action, far from it. But right now, there's nothing we can really do about the things that are not right in front of us. And this is certainly right in front of us, this Five of Discs, but it also does represent things that we have no control over, right? The material crisis can be instigated or catalyzed in some ways by stuff that has nothing to do with us. And so when we worry about it, we're just kind of, you know, recycling that same energetic frequency over and over and over. But to consider that there is the space for something new when something burns down, right? We had our tower not too long ago in the reading. We had that tower moment, and that does bring this up, right? That the tower, you know, is the sudden breakout of realizations and the destruction of old values. But at the same time, what it does is create space for new things. It creates space for transformation. But this is really showing that this causal factor, right? In this linear progression of cause and effect is a lot of worry about the material world, our safety, our health, our finances, our resources coming into the moment, okay? Now, like I said, this is directly related to yesterday. Yesterday's reading, this card was right here in our outcome, our effect of our cause and effect relationship. So we can see that there is a connection here that is continuing to be displayed to us, that we are continuing to live through. Now, when we look at the heart of the matter, right, here's the center of our reading, the heart of the matter, right? This is the axis point between our energetic polarity, our energetic axis, right? The vertical axis we're going to see here, and what we see manifested outside of us, how we're expressing it. The heart is the axis, right? The heart is the place where the toroidal field expresses itself, right? The heart is where we make sense of the crossover of these two realms, right? And it's really where we manifest from. I think there is this idea that we manifest from our mind, but by the time you have conscious thoughts, it's well implemented in an energetic frequency. And it's through the heart that it really emits out, right? So here in the heart of the matter is the Knight of Discs, right? The fire of earth. Now you can see in this card, and it is reversed, and we're going to talk about that. But what we see here is a warrior, right? We see a warrior that has his shield. There is a weapon, but it's much more of a harvest tool, right? It has much more to do with the fact that Earth in its function as provider and protector, right? This is a very, by the way, that is the frequency of the Alpha Centauri starseeds, is protector and provider. So if you've had a reading with me, you know you're from Alpha Centauri as a starseed. This is right up your alley. This is your wheelhouse as Alpha Centaurian. So there is a sense here that number two, by the way, Mars is in Virgo, right? Virgo is an earth sign. This is very much a Mars in Virgo energy, fire of earth. And Mars in Virgo is really important, and because by tomorrow it's going to be in an opposition to Neptune, and this is a very disempowering type of transit. When Mars is opposite Neptune, Mars feels disempowered. A lot of the power is dissolved away by Neptune. Excuse me. Sorry. Oh my God. I usually mute myself. It was better than coughing into the microphone, which I might still have to do. So bear with me, guys. All right. So, how's the stream? It looks like it's fine, and I feel like that the sound is doing okay as well, but I'm not entirely sure. So please, somebody let me know. It wasn't until the very end of yesterday's transmission that somebody was like, yeah, the sound sucks. And I was like, oh, well, had I known that, like, a while ago, I probably would have ended the stream and started over with better sound. So somebody please let me know if something is not right. I would really appreciate that in terms of the sound. So here we go. Mars in Virgo, right? This is when Mars is in opposition to Neptune. This is a lot of dissolution of that thrusting forward, that actualization, the courage and drive and ambition. So we can already, I feel like this is already starting to make itself known, especially because this is reversed, right? So this upright, this character, the court cards, right? They represent us as actual people or people in our lives. Remember, this is a generalized reading. This is not going to resonate with everybody in their personalized experience. This is a snapshot of what's going on energetically, but this is about being industrious, patient, steady, reliable. This individual is here to provide in a very earth-based way, and working a lot without asking for much in the return, and being very diligent, right? It's just doing what needs to be done and using our fire of creativity and transformation and action to actually do this work in a very earth-based way. Now, when it's reversed, let's see here. I really feel like that there's something wrong with the stream, because this is what happened yesterday, that nobody came on and they popped off right away. So if there is something wrong with the stream, it would be great if somebody could let me know, and nobody's on. So hold on one second. I'm going to check something real quick here. I'm going to turn off the audio. So far, so good. I mean, I just checked in with YouTube on the stream itself, and it seems fine. So anyway, I guess it's just what it is. Anyway, so when it's reversed like this, and I appreciate your patience, guys, and I apologize for these technical issues. It feels like this has been, somebody actually reported to me this morning that they are also dealing with lots of electronic issues, so who knows. Now, when it's reversed like this, let's talk about it. Difficulty understanding others, right? Self-centered, it's sullen, you're stubborn, you're jealous of people who are getting more than you, right? There's a grasping nature, there's a stagnation. And when we have worry, right, as the causal factor meeting this point of resistance or inversion to a very industrious and steady and reliable work ethic, we can find ourselves really struggling to feel like we are grounded, that we can get anything done, that we can actually be industrious and provide. And since these court cards represent us as actual people or people in our lives, I would venture to guess that many of us are still struggling, right? We're still struggling in the heart of things with being this person, getting something done, providing for ourselves, really putting our action towards the material world, especially because we're worrying so much about what is happening that it really impacts our ability to be steady and focus on what's right in front of us, okay? This is in the heart here. Now, when we look at the root, which is down here, right? This is the root. This is where we are energetically rooted. This is what's happening maybe in the subconscious that we're not fully aware of. This is where we draw our power from, is at the root and the base of who we are. Now, the 4, or birth, right? The 4 is a very stable number, right? It's the square. It's stable. It's secure. And when we talk about birth, we're literally talking about something new coming into the world. Again, it's reversed. And so we are finding ourselves, there's a lot here that we're struggling. We're struggling with the material reality and what we feel like is not coming through. We're feeling unfulfilled. There's a difficulty in finding purpose, right? This is a difficult labor as well. Delay with new beginnings. Maybe an external opportunity hasn't presented itself yet. And that is why the worry keeps kind of focusing, we're kind of focused on it. It keeps rehashing itself. We're not feeling like a stable provider of our material reality. We're not feeling industrious and patient. We're really in resistance to being this person. And where we're rooted right now, this is a generalized reading, is that this is a difficult birth, and we're really having a hard time finding our purpose and dealing with this, right? There may be delays. And of course, when we're worried about our material security with that 5 of discs, right? We're worried that we're going to lose everything. And we ourselves are not feeling very stable as a provider in that way. Then yes, we're going to find ourselves also energetically and subconsciously rooted and drawing our power from a place of lack and a place of difficulty and a place of delay. And this does signal to us that we do have to work harder and gather our courage to take a first step, okay? And like I said, when Mars is in that opposition, and we'll look at this in the chart very soon, when Mars is in that opposition to Neptune, which is exact tomorrow, this is a very disempowering transit. Our warrior energy is dissolved away because Mars rules Aries. It is the seed point that Aries represents, our ego consciousness, our subjective experience of being in the world, right? And so there is a boundary between us, the shell of the seed, and everything else. Neptune just dissolves it away. And so we start feeling like we're losing power. We're losing our boundaries. We're losing our initiative. And this, like I said, you can already feel this coming in. This is why this still point is so important today. And so maybe we do need to work a little harder, gather our courage. I think that is more important than continuing to push ourselves. And we're going to see with the guidance cards here that we really do need to take a respite. But it also is showing that if you're feeling like there's a difficulty, if it is a difficult birth, right, or a difficult labor, if you're having a hard time finding your purpose, feeling hopeless, that was something very strong yesterday, just hopeless. Is it ever gonna get any better, right? Am I ever gonna feel better? Am I ever going to heal, right? Is this pain ever going to go away? I think that this is really, we are rooted here, and there is something new coming in, but we are really struggling against it right now. And it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. In fact, when we do feel that way, it's our opportunity in that moment. It's an opportunity to adjust ourselves, and we're going to see in the chart exactly how that's spelled out. Now, when it comes to what we are consciously aware of, where our attention is, how we can release this energy, how we can contribute our energy in a conscious way, and where our attention is. It's interesting. This is the next step, is Hilarion. He's an ascended master of what? Research, science, truth, right? Healing. And it's the next step. Number 4 is birth. Number 5 is our ascended master Hilarion. So if you look at this card, you see that he's surrounded by silhouettes and of all these different people from different time periods, different ages, right? They're coming, and he's in his lab. He's in his lab and he's studying, right? And he's alone, but he's not really alone, right? He's surrounded by all these different figures, right, that are there to support him, maybe give insight, maybe be like, when he has that aha moment, to be like, oh yeah, so everybody has their intuition dialed in different ways. For me, it's very much in my body, and for most people it really is in the body. But when that flash of insight happens, it moves through my body. I feel a surge of energy go through my body. So, but you have to, and sometimes your guides speak to you, right? You get that clairaudient, like you hear it, you see it. Sometimes you just know it. And so, but we're surrounded by all of these reminders and all of this support that's not readily visible, but is always there. But Hilarion is focusing on what he's studying. And so this is an ascended master. So we can put our attention and our guidance, our attention and our focus and our conscious awareness, releasing our energy into this study, right? Where you kind of have to push everything aside for a little while. Go into your sanctuary, go into your lab, go into your study, whatever it is, and really allow yourself the opportunity to take these deep dives, right? To get to the truth, to understand something, to come to an understanding of concrete knowledge, right? For yourself. Not anything in particular out there. We're talking about what is right in front of us, and our ability to process this information, to research it, to connect to truth is very strong. And we can ask for assistance from this symbolic representation, right? I mean, we're not suggesting anybody should call in anything other than divine source, but this archetypal language helps us understand the different steps on the journey, right? So this is where we can really put our attention right now, even though there's worry and there's difficulty and there's resistance on a very material level. Giving ourselves the chance to kind of quiet the mind and really focus in on something very specific and concrete is going to help. I think so. And, again, when you worry, when your mind is occupied with worrying about the physical material reality, you can't actually apply it to this type of study. So that's also something to consider. Now, here is our outcome, right? This is the outcome, the expected effect based on all of these things coming together, because this is energetic. This is the conscious awareness outside of us, right? The manifestation in the cause and effect relationship. Here's the Fool. Right? The 0 point, right? True innocence, the beginner's mind, open to all possibilities, right? This individual is surrounded by natural forces, right? He's got the grain of wheat in one hand. He's got the crystal in the other. He's got the crystal on top of the crown chakra, right? He's even got these 3 diamond pieces that are coming off the root chakra into that earth star chakra, right? Grounding him to something very secure and stable and very resonant, right? Crystals holding incredibly high vibrations in their structure, whatever the crystal is. He's got the sun right here in his his sacral chakra, the seat of our creative power. This individual, this archetypal representation is open to all the possibilities, and it's a positive breakup of structures and limitations. You are sorry about that. No, go away, man. Telegram. I'll tell you what, trusting your instincts, trust your gut, realize that, whereas the tower is a very destructive breakup of these structures, and it's usually very rapid and a radical reorientation. This is a positive, right? This is open to all possibilities because there is nothing but possibilities around you, because this is the beginner's mind, the true innocence of the fool. And this is where we're headed. And this is what we want to really embody in order to be able to, stay in our 0 point, in our still point, in our calmness, right? The eye of the storm, right? Because we can't control any of that stuff that is outside of us. All we can do is find this point within us. And when we do, then we can create anything. This is when we become masters of our own universe, right? And this is when we have direct connection to divine source, to God, right? It's in this moment. The separation is no more in this moment between us and source. And so this is where we're headed, but it's not going to come without some difficulty. And I suspect that this is still going to play itself out. But like I said, with the moon in Cancer today, it's like a missing piece. So there's some guidance here to help us along the way. Oh, the Queen of Roses. When it comes to this difficult birth process, this is about a very loving and supportive woman. So either we embody this and offer this to ourselves, being very loving, compassionate to ourselves, right? Being very nurturing to ourselves during this process. There's a loving connection. Maybe this is somebody in your life. Maybe this is somebody that shows up that's just going to be this type of loving and supportive woman. This could show you a resolution to a difficult situation, like a delayed creation or a difficult labor process, whatever it is. We really want to bring this person, either us or invited in through other people, to really support and nurture us. This is a very, very loving connection here for a very difficult process. And along with that, the Kiwi as our animal guide, it says, do a walking meditation each day for a week. So it's the idea that we can find stillness in our movement, right? You are intentionally moving. So that is also another way to find that stillness, is you can keep moving, right? And you're finding balance in the movement because it is a back and forth. And remember, Mercury and Venus are in Libra right now, the scales. It's a dynamic process. So when you walk, you're actually reinforcing that dynamic balance because you're using both sides of your body in order to do that process. But it's also very intentional. You feel into your body. You feel what it's like for each step to make contact with the earth. You know, when I took Tai Chi, we spent like weeks just on the basics of how to move your feet, right? The very basic movement of the lower body. And it really frustrated people because they're like, why are we spending so much time on this? But it's important, right? You want to feel the contact with the earth. You want to feel what it's like for each square inch of your foot to make contact. This in itself is a meditation. This will ground you. This will connect you to earth-based wisdom, which is something we really need right now. We need to be able to trust the material world instead of worrying so much about it in order to really master this 0 point within us. So this Kiwi is offering us this opportunity and this suggestion and this guidance to do something like this. You know, it can be any kind of meditation that's moving, but you know, yard work, right? Gardening, walking or hiking, even like exercise, anything like this, but it's intentional. It's slow. It's meant to balance the different balance the two sides of the body. And that's very much goes along with the Libra archetype that's got Mercury, got Venus, and asteroid Vesta all in Libra right now. And this is important because when October hits, that's going to be where you need to be able to find your balance point in the midst of the chaos, because that's when it's really going to start is October. That is kind of like the flashpoint where Pluto stations direct, Saturn stations direct, and we have a new moon in Libra. So, and we'll get there. We'll totally get there. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. People are like, tell me what's going on. And it's like, no, we need to focus right here and right now, because when we focus on right here and right now, allows us to prepare ourselves for what's coming, right? Which cannot be stopped, of course, we know that. So when it comes to where our conscious awareness and attention is, where we can release this energy into our everyday awareness, the goose, right? It takes time to rest and recuperate rather than continuing your striving, right? It's really easy to get ourselves caught up in just constantly acting and acting and acting and acting, right? We need to balance it out with rest. Okay, we've been doing so much work on a subconscious level. Many people have been doing such incredibly deep healing work lately on so many levels. And now we have this moment to stabilize and to be still and to rest your mind, right? Rest your minds, bring it in, right? Maybe focus on very specific, course of thought or study, right? Rather than trying to output it all the time, right? It's okay to come in and reacquaint yourself with information, with study, with research, but you want to do it in a way that's not necessarily like this outpouring, right? You want some time to rest and recuperate, because when you rest, you mobilize your resources for the next phase. And I assure you, the next phase is going to need us to mobilize our resources. So take the opportunity while you can. And of course, the Queen of Scrolls, another queen. So we know that there is a lot of divine feminine energy coming into us, represented by us and other people in our lives. Now she's reversed, right? So we're losing this position of communication in some ways. Maybe there's a separation with an intellectual woman in our life. Maybe we are losing connection with this ability to communicate outwardly. And perhaps it's really in its inversion or its reversal, suggesting again that we just take some time to process the information rather than actively engaging in more communication. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be talking to each other, that we shouldn't be studying, that we shouldn't be researching. But again, we want to focus on what's right in front of us, and we don't want to keep outputting so much right now. We really need to gather our resources. And again, we can be this Queen of Scrolls in an internal way. When we see a reversal like this, we can bring it in, and we can harness this communication and this access to information in a way that is for us, right? It's like gathering it all in and allowing ourselves to process what's already here, right? And focus what's right in front of us, instead of trying to reach out all the time, and get more information. You have everything you need already embedded in you and me and all of us. We are genetically predisposed. Our very nature of being has all of the answers within us. So there's no need to keep rehashing, to going out and to externally outputting or searching, when we can just go within. We just go within. And that also will allow us to rest and recuperate, because when we are receiving, when we are still, this is when we get the most insight, I think, is in these moments. Okay, so that's a lot of information, but it's a pretty clear message, I would say. So we're going to pop over now to the astrological chart, and we're going to start applying what we're seeing in the actual cosmological cycles to this energy. And astrology itself is also an archetypal language. So let's see here. It's important to realize that, so that we can harness this, right? Because all of these planets have an impact on us on an energetic level. They have an impact on us, psychologically through an archetypal representation, but they also all have their own frequency, just like everything else does. So when they're in geometric patterns, those have a frequency too. So let's look at this. Let's talk about it. So today our moon is in Cancer, okay? And we've talked about that already, and this is the home territory of the moon. So let's go back a couple hours to show you where things are really starting. The moon is in Cancer because Cancer is the container. Cancer is the lattice structure of our familial and emotional bonds that holds us emotionally. It's the the fourth house is the Cancerian house in the astrological wheel. So it is the place that holds our emotional vulnerability, right? It's the Cancer, it's the shell of the crab, right? It's the shell of the crab. It is the chalice. It is the womb, right? It is what holds us, nurtures us, protects us so that we can be in our very emotional nature and be vulnerable, right? This is where our self-esteem develops. And the moon, being that it is our emotional landscape and our internal waters, is at home here because it's when we are held and protected and there is a containment for our emotional vulnerability, then we can fully dive in to who we are, right? So the moon here is powerful. And she's dark, right? She's in her waning phase because we're getting close to this new moon now. So this is also a time to not take a lot of action as the moon is getting into her darkest part of her cycle. It's more a time to really just kind of settle into this, right? To be able to review and reflect over what's transpired over the course of this cycle and to allow for a much deeper connection to our intuitive cycle or our intuitive channel, our psychic channel, and gathering insight from below as opposed to above, right? And so we find ourselves very sensitive right now with the moon in Cancer. And the more that we align with this by going into that still point, by finding that stillness to receive, to do that walking meditation, whatever it is, to be very sensitive to what's going on, the more we're going to be able to receive the insight that we're looking for to assist us as we journey along here. So the first thing we're going to look at is that well, there's a couple things. We'll look at the moon transit, and then I'm going to transition into some of the larger transits that are also exact today. So the moon was first in a square, you can see here, to Mercury in Libra. So, Mercury in an air sign is not unhappy, right? Libra is an air sign. It is the application of our knowledge to find perfect form and balance, right? Libra is about justice and balance and the form of that balance, right? It's very much about applying our knowledge to find that balance. So Mercury here is not unhappy. It's very much utilizing the mental constructs, our mental ability to discover what that means for us, to discover what it means to be balanced, what is just, what is fair, what is symmetrical in our own minds, right? And so always part of Libra is this coming back around to the still point in the middle of the scale, right? It's like a seesaw and going to the fulcrum. You deal with one side, you deal with the other, you learn how to balance it, but part of that is finding the fulcrum of the scale. And this is this moment where Mercury at 3 to 4 degrees Libra is in this position. Now it's in a square. What does that mean? They're at a 90-degree angle. Cross purposes of the moon in Cancer. As the moon is moving from Gemini to Cancer, just like any transit from Gemini to Cancer, we're still kind of got the connection to Gemini, which is the this and that, the black and the white, the positive, negative, right? The Gemini twins that are certainly the two sides to the same coin, but they are distinctly two sides, and we start to recognize that as our consciousness starts to develop. So in early Cancer, we're emotionally still kind of dealing with the back and forth still as we are getting more comfortable with just stabilizing ourselves emotionally. So there's this kind of self-justification right now that the moon in this position represents, while Mercury is like, no, I am able to conceptualize in my mind this midpoint and this centralized a central point that allows for a group in some ways, right? Because Libra is about relationship, right? You can't have a balance without something else outside of you providing the counterweight. So it's the idea that in the middle here is that balance point is in fact holding a collection of people that are surrounding it. And so this is in our mind, right? Our mind is able to conceptualize this, but emotionally, we're still kind of vacillating back and forth. And I talked about this already, the vacillation, the oscillation that's still happening. So it's still here. And this square is a friction, right? So in our minds, we get it, but in our emotions and our feelings, we're still like, oh, it's still back and forth. I'm still kind of like, arguing with myself about something. So this square, when we lean into these cross purposes, we actually grow quite a bit. So this is something that happened already this morning, right? You can see here at the time frame, 8:23 a.m. This is Eastern Standard Time. So this is already exact. So the moon is very transient, right? It moves very swiftly. And so it's a feeling that's very transient. So we have all these opportunities to feel all these different things as we go through the day. From here is where it gets interesting. So the moon moves forward and comes into a quincunx with Saturn. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. Now, I want to talk about what happened yesterday because it's directly related to what's happening now. This quincunx between Saturn and the Sun yesterday was an incredibly potent moment for alchemical transmutation, right? It was really, really hard yesterday, right? Because the sun is having us wanting to express ourselves through this very, very strong individuality. And what it was really representing is this cathartic moment here of expression of what is ultimately an inner conflict. And the inconjunct, right? The lack of connection, the square peg in the round hole here is that Saturn is providing this inner backbone for all of us right now to take our vision and put it into action of a healthy and fully actualized collective of people, right? The Aquarian nature at its best. Now, we're being provided with Saturn in its retrograde, this inner backbone, right? The inner scaffolding, the inner authority to act out the vision, right? Of this fully actualized collective of humans, right? Where it's all individual sovereign beings and in a healthy collective and a collection of, that is the highest version of Aquarius, right? So this quincunx yesterday was no joke. I mean, I saw it, it was expressed so many times over in all of my interactions. I felt it within myself. It was incredible. Now, the reason this is important right now is because this is a yod, right? Because you see now that the moon is in a quincunx, the same kind of inconjunct, square peg in a round hole, right? They don't fit together. We have to adjust ourselves. This is the moment of the alchemical transmutation where we square the circle, right? The philosopher's stone. It is about how we bring our divine nature, which is the circle, into material form, which is the square. So it's the Vitruvian Man, right? The Da Vinci, drawing of the Vitruvian Man. So this also, the moon now is in a quincunx with Saturn in a different position. Now, when you have these two quincunxes to one point, and then the two points are in a sextile, right? 60-degree angle from Cancer to Virgo. It's called a yod, or a finger of God. So these 2 points on their own are very inconjunct. They are the square peg in a round hole, right? It's the sextile between these 2 points, the investment opportunity between the two, that provides us the ability to really alchemize this position, right? And so the moon in Cancer at this point today, in a sextile to the sun, in this quincunx, right, or in conjunct with Saturn, is really about purity and understanding, right? It's like a little child bending over to reach into a pond to catch a fish that they're never going to catch, right? It's innocent. It's purity and understanding. It's a very naive quest for knowledge and an understanding of life, but it's always elusive. But as a child, in that innocence, you don't realize how elusive it is. You go for it anyway. And so this connection here is really the way that we utilize that finger of God, right? To put the vision into action is not going to come exclusively from this really strong expression of self, right? This original expression of self that's really just a very cathartic expression of this inner conflict that we're feeling. But it also is, if we can invest this purity and understanding, this kind of innocence that the moon in Cancer represents, if we can invest that into the sun, and also if we can adjust it ourselves in the face of this incredibly, the thing about Saturn is, yeah, it's providing a backbone and a scaffolding, but it's also providing a boundary that you can't get away from. It's responsibility, right? Within each of us. It's our responsibility within each of us that we act out the vision, right? In some way. There's no getting around this. And when Saturn stations direct, it's going to come back over this point, and it's going to be something that has to happen. Then we're finally going to actually be acting it out. Right now, we're finding our own inner authority for this right now as it's in its retrograde. So this yod or finger of God is incredible opportunity today. And you can feel like as soon as you come into that innocence of the full, you come into the innocence of pure understanding and innocence of the 0 point, and you invest that into a very valid expression of our inner conflict right now. This is going to be how we fully transmute this energy. It's really incredible to see it played out in the astrology like this. And, you know, we are like a raw diamond in a way, right? That's being cut, and it's uncomfortable, right? It's got that grinding noise, and it's incredible amount of heat, and it doesn't feel good, but what it's doing is shaping us into the perfect reflection, the perfect pool in order to reflect, right? That is really what we're working with today. And it's arduous, right? It's training for perfection in order to fully manifest what? An ideal. Oh my gosh. And this is important because this is where Neptune is sitting in Pisces right now. So that's really going to do it for the astrology. Now, one thing I will say, speaking of Mars is going to come into an exact opposition with Neptune tomorrow. But right now, it's an exact opposition to Pallas Athena, also in Neptune, right at 21 degrees, is the goddess of wisdom and strategy, right? She is the goddess of war, but she's the strategist, right? And she's very wise. She uses her wisdom, right? She's the one that is not, she's developing all the strategy for when Mars does go to war. So you can feel the tension already between these two, because we're all ready to put on the armor of God, put on that breastplate and go charging in and stepping into that role. Whereas the tension with Pisces, right, is like, hold off here, right? There's a strategy that we need to employ. And I think this is really important that we wrap our minds around this right now, because when this opposition with Neptune tomorrow is exact, it's really going to challenge our ability to stand in our power, stand in that armor, step into that royal coat of arms, right? In opposition to us, to an energy that is dissolving everything down to its into its base level, right? That's what Neptune does. Neptune dissolves everything. So we're going to feel this really strongly. And this is where Mars starts to really lose its power and feel disempowered, because there's no boundary anymore with Neptune. Neptune is just going to dissolve everything. So how do we deal with that? Well, we're going to have to find the midpoint, the fulcrum here, right? The balance of the seesaw is going to be where we actualize ourselves and harness the most power. Because if we go one way into Neptune and Pisces, then we lose ourselves entirely. We go the other way into Mars, then we don't realize that we're all substantiating some sort of ideal together, instead of just getting into that personalized warrior stance. They're both important, and you have to find the balance. So the strategy with Pallas Athena today is really going, if Mars can just kind of put the ego aside for 2 seconds while the strategist is like, hey, Let me show you the full picture here on how you are going to take this great transcendent peak experience into everyday life. It's going to make a world of difference for us. And also along with that is that Saturn is in a trine to asteroid Ceres, the goddess of agriculture, and the representation of actual Gaia, of the actual planet, is in a trine to Saturn in Aquarius, an air trine. You don't see it on this chart, but she is absolutely here. Still in a conjunction with the moon's north node, of course, and this trine, right? This foundational support that these two are giving each other, right? That doesn't cause any friction, it doesn't cause any tension, but it also doesn't require us to participate to get the most out of this situation. Is, again, the quiver filled with arrows, right? We have all of the tools that we need within our own consciousness to penetrate through all of our obstacles, even if that obstacle is our own ego, right? And when we do this, again, we can act out the vision, but the vision has to be a laser focus. We have to have laser focus on this vision. It's one thing to see it. It's another for it to transmute into action. But there's something here about the energy of the earth herself and what she provides, and the sustenance that she provides, the nourishment that she provides, the seasonal changes that go along with a growing cycle is all part of what the earth provides for us. And what she is doing now, if we connect to her directly, this all goes back again to this Fool dynamic, the 0 point, the eye of the storm, the singular stillness here, and the true innocence, right? And so there is a certain amount of aggressiveness because we are shooting an arrow. It's like an archer, but it's what is that bullseye and what is that laser point focus that we want to get to? And there's something about connecting to the earth directly right now. And like I said earlier, it's about trusting nature instead of worrying about it so much, right? Trusting the bigger picture here is important. So that's going to do it for today, my friends. I think that is plenty of information to work with for September 1st. So if you are interested in that flash sale for to see how the next lunar cycle, the new moon on the 6th of September, is going to affect you, what areas of your life it's going to affect, you can book through my website, catalystenergies.net. I am on Facebook and Telegram. You can link to that in the description box below as well. My email is also there. And I just truly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. Take very good care of yourself. Give yourself some respite and some recuperation today. Allow yourself to receive. Allow yourself to be. Allow yourself in that stillness right now. It's imperative that we do so. And I know that it's uncomfortable, but what we're going through is like a training period to bring us into perfection. And when we do that, we can really transmute a lot of things and really act out that perfect vision that I know that we all have for the highest potential for humanity on this planet. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I'll see you tomorrow.